It's time to create a profitable, scalable, and sustainable studio for yourself and your students. Welcome to Dance Studio Empire. I'm Jen, dance studio owner for 30 years, running multiple locations with over 1,000 students, dance business coach turned mastermind mentor for dance studio owners, creatives, and leaders like you. I know you're committed to growing your studio and creating the time and financial freedom you most want, while also being the best in the industry with a reputation to match. I've coached hundreds of studio owners who have grown to 250, 500, and over 1,000 students using my signature studio scaled method. And in this podcast, I'll give you the clarity, strategy, and CEO mindset to help you do the same. Let's dive in. Hey, dance studio owners, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Dance Studio Empire podcast. Now, this topic is again a result of speaking with studio owners, speaking to them in the past, and no doubt this conversation will be something that I have in the future as well. And basically it's, should you burn it all down or persist? Now, I get it. I hear you. Burning it all down sounds a bit dramatic, and I'm not that dramatic person. However, I do also know there are times when I can pretty much guarantee you've had that thought, I just want to burn it all down. But at what point should you walk away? In all reality, right? So when you've been running a studio for a period of time, it's only human nature to have those feelings of the highest of highs when everything's great, and also the lowest of lows when things are not great. And I'm no exception to that. I absolutely went through all of those feelings. There were multiple times during my 30 years where I was so exhausted. I felt defeated. I didn't want to hear from another dance parent. I didn't want to have to justify why I had to increase class prices or make a change in the timetable. And I didn't want to have to find a new teacher because one of my great ones was moving on. And even after that hard slog of coming back after COVID, I would find myself often questioning, is it all worth it? Or why am I still doing this? Or surely working somewhere else for someone is going to be easier than what I'm currently doing. Now, as you may know, I have started studios from scratch. I bought an existing studio, which I then built up and sold. I sold a portion of my studio that we started in a totally different area. And then more recently, I sold my original studio at the end of last year. So I've honestly felt all the feels that you have probably experienced, and if not, may experience in the future. And honestly, there's no right or wrong answer that I'm going to be giving you here, but just some questions to ask yourself if you should keep going or consider moving on. Or another alternative is just changing what you're doing. Anyway, I'll get more into that in a sec. I just want to give you a quick story. So about a year or two ago, probably closer to 2 years now, I was contacted by a dance studio owner who wanted some coaching. Of course, I said yes. But the thing with working with this studio owner was that her studio wasn't far away from where I lived. So I was actually able to coach her in person, which in my opinion is the absolute best type of coaching, because I can then get a real gauge of how she was feeling. I could read her body language. I could read between the lines. I could hear the fact that she was really over it, really in her tone when she was speaking, and it was time for her to move on. It just gave me the opportunity to get her truth about how she was really feeling with the business. So she'd booked, I think it was 6 sessions. I can't remember exactly. And her goals were similar, wanting to go through her timetable, her pricing structure, offers to grow and scale the studio. But by the end of that first session, it was obvious from the conversations that we were having and the questions I was asking that she was just at that place where she was ready to sell. So the next 5 coaching sessions were spent prepping her studio to sell. which on a side note actually happened. We turned her whole studio around within this time frame, and she sold it within 6 weeks. And was bought by an exceptional studio owner who I adore, because I was lucky enough to actually meet her through this process. So it was just time. It was evident to me after speaking with her that she was ready to move on. She'd been doing it for quite a while too. And so I guess having that conversation, answering those questions, it then became clear for her that this was the path moving forward. And she did it extremely well. So I thought in today's episode, I would talk you through some of the questions that you could ask yourself, or things that you could consider that may help you decide whether you should persist or potentially move on. Okay, first thing is the passion and the purpose behind why you opened your studio. So I'm going to read these out as if it's you asking yourself the question. So if you do want to jot down some notes, now's the time to grab a pen or record it on your phone, however you want to do it. But the first thing you want to ask yourself is, what aspects of running your studio do I still find exciting and fulfilling? Are there areas where I feel disconnected or uninspired? And do I believe in the impact and value of what my studio offers to students? So they're just some questions to get you thinking about going back to that original reason why I would say you started your studio in the first place. Back to that passion and the purpose. Next lot, personal reflection. So about you right now. First question, am I still passionate about dance and teaching, or has my enthusiasm waned? Do I feel fulfilled and satisfied with the work I do at the studio? And have my personal goals and priorities shifted over time? Now, just because you are maybe not feeling satisfied or fulfilled with what you're doing currently at the studio, there may be a way to change that, so you start doing something else. However, we need to identify that might be a reason why you're feeling like you don't want to continue. Okay, next one is your business assessment. So, look, there's lots of questions in this, but I've narrowed it down. The first one is, how is the financial health of my studio? Am I meeting revenue goals? Do I have a clear vision and strategy for the future of my studio? So these are some, pretty big ones. Obviously, it is focused a little bit more around the financial and revenue side of things. There's a lot more to business, I get. However, depending on the answers that you had for those questions there, I want you to ask yourself some further clarifying questions. As in, could you change your current business model? Could you downsize? So if it's all too much, could you downsize and it might bring back that joy? Could you pay someone to keep things running? This is a really big question. Can you afford to sell? Are your family relying on your income? Can you afford to keep your studio running? Is it draining from your family and your life? But if so, is there a way you could cut back on expenses to make it more viable and profitable? So see how, depending on your answers, you then ask the clarifying questions, because there's multiple paths moving forward. It's like, do you remember the Pick a Path books? Do you remember reading those? And they were so fun, right? And so it's almost pick a path. It's like, okay, I can do this. I want to do this. Now, how do we get there? Sort of the same. All right, maybe I'm showing my age. I don't know. Anyway, next one, future plans and options. Have I considered alternative paths or opportunities within the dance industry? What are my long-term goals for personal and professional growth? And would exploring new ventures or collaborations reignite my passion and motivation? So could you essentially just change direction from where you currently are? Some more questions. All right, next one is health and well-being. So how is my physical and mental health affected by the demands of running the studio? Am I experiencing chronic stress, fatigue, or burnout symptoms? Which I would hazard a guess to say that most of you have or are currently suffering from those, which I, again, completely understand. But then the final question in this part is, do I have a support system or resources to help me manage that stress and wellness? So I do believe that majority of jobs that you're going to be doing or wherever people are working, there is an element of stress. There is an element of fatigue and burnout. I don't think it's just studio owners. Life in general is causing all these things. However, it's about the support that you have or the resources that you use. So, more questions. Okay, finally, decision making. Have I weighed the pros and cons of continuing to run the studio versus exploring other options? Am I open to seeking professional advice or guidance for strategic decision making? And what other factors could influence my decision to sell, close, or reinvent the studio? So they're sort of the main questions that I would encourage you to look at first. And obviously there are many things to consider. This is just a starting point if you're starting to feel a bit shaky. Now there are some big consequences obviously that come with selling, and I'm living it right now. So I've sold my studio, as you know, and I've noticed like I don't have the income that I had. The cash flow is quite hard. I actually feel now I'm working harder with my coaching and my mastermind than I was at the studio. And so these are things to consider, because sometimes things aren't, like sometimes the grass isn't greener on the other side. Sometimes it is though. And so it's just about exploring all your options, having conversations with people, having conversations with whether you have a partner or a close family member, whether you have friends who really understand what it is that we do. That will help you clarify where you are moving forward. So the question, should you persist or move on? Ultimately, the answer lies within you. But I do strongly suggest taking time. Don't rush into this decision, even though we rushed in. It felt like with that story I told you at the beginning, it was a rush. It wasn't a rush because this was something she'd been considering for about 12 months. I just was able to identify it and bring it to the surface and make it happen. That's my job as a coach. But take the time and just assess your goals, assess your values, and your overall well-being. So this is not just talking about you personally, but also your family or your close-knit friends. Have a think about that. You want to seek clarity on what truly matters to you and your dance studio. But remember that it's okay to pivot, evolve, and even start fresh if it aligns with your vision and is still bringing you joy and fulfillment. So whatever path you choose, I honestly just hope that it leads you to greater success and joy in your journey as a dance studio owner. Okay, so that's it for today's episode. I hope I haven't actually made it more confusing for you. Of course, as always, you are always welcome to reach out to me via Instagram DM _Jen Dalton _. More than happy to start a conversation with you about this. However, I just keep going back to don't rush any decisions. Just have a think about it, have the conversations, and it will become clearer for you. All right, everyone, I'm going to finish up for today. I hope you've got a lot out of this episode, and I look forward to being in your ears next week.